Hey guys, welcome to another CGS live stream. I'm Tyler, and we're going to be doing more of this decorative UI and frame design today. This is part 3. So if you guys have been here for some of my other streams, you'll be familiar with what we're doing here. But let's recap real quick before we dive back in. So first, a summary. So we're making these collector cards for a series of characters that I've been making. We're doing the back of those cards, and we're trying to make it look fancy, right? So we want it to be fun, while also having some critical information displayed in a logical way here. So we identified 6 stats that we were going to show on the back of the card, in addition to the name of the character and a couple of extra bits of information in the bottom corners here, and some legal mumbo jumbo here in the bottom middle. Okay, so the first thing we did was we looked at the 6 stats, and we talked about, what little icons might we use for all of these. And if you guys play D&D, then you'll be pretty familiar with these 6 stats. All right, so we ended up choosing a little fist here. We went with a tiny sword, a running person, a brain, a book, and a lion head to represent these 6 stats. And we have a rough version of all that blocked in here. We took some time to figure out the overall design with a quick sketch. And now we're painting it. So if we turn this on, this is our progress so far, doing the final render of the back of the design. Now, the cool thing is we're going to get some free stuff out of this because the design is mirrored along the vertical axis here, but we're doing top-down lighting, and so the bottom half we're going to have to render uniquely, this bottom right quadrant. So we're going to keep working on this. We'll be injecting some stronger values in here as we go, and adding some subtle colors as well. I don't want it to be too colorful in these metal and stone parts, because the color is going to mainly come from the background behind the numbers and the stat icons, which we can see here. There'll be sort of like a stained glass element, and I think the title is going to be backed by stained glass as well. But we'll get into that a bit later. So anyway, that was a recap of what we're doing, and I have some reference here. If we can get to it, if we get far enough, we'll do the final little drawings for the icons themselves, and I've just grabbed some license-free stuff online here, looking at what things we might want to have up at the ready for doing the final designs. Whenever you're going to draw something that you may be less familiar with, then it's good to have some reference nearby. Not that I'm necessarily totally unfamiliar with these things, but I thought, better to have them here, because I might notice some subtleties or nuances that might elevate the design, right? So, and just another random note here about animal anatomy. So we noticed that we've got a real photo of a lion, we've got a sculpture of a lion, and then we've got a cat skull. I couldn't find a license-free version of a lion skull. We have to be a little careful about reference here on the stream, but I found one of a cat skull, which is similar enough, right? It's just going to be proportioned slightly differently, but the main features of the skull are basically the same. And when we're studying animals, they're very unique. They're built much differently than humans, right? There's tons of variety in the animal kingdom. And there's an extra layer of difficulty with that because they've got fur and hair and, feathers and all this other stuff going on that sometimes makes it hard for us to see what's actually happening with the anatomy. So whenever you're studying animals, I always recommend, in addition to looking at photographs of the animal, try and find a skeleton of the animal as well to look at. You might be surprised at what you discover by looking at that. Okay, but we'll set this aside for the moment here and continue on with our render. And these are chill streams, guys, so feel free to pop into the chat and ask questions or share anything art related. We're just kind of hanging out and having fun painting together. Hey, Rushback. Great to hear. Great to hear. Glad you could make it. And I suspect we'll be done with this whole thing well in time for Halloween, so we'll start doing something else that is maybe sort of Halloween relevant. I was thinking about maybe doing a little spooky portrait, maybe of a mummy or a, you know, vampire, or, you know, something Halloween specific would be fun. I am doing great. I am doing great. How are you doing? How's your week going so far? We're all the way to Thursday, so you've successfully made it to Thursday, right? The weekend is not far away. Okay, Rushback asks, how do I get the idea for concepts? Because I always, when I want to start drawing, but your mind is blank. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, one of the challenges of being a concept artist is you're an idea battery, right? People want you to be an endless source of ideas, visual ideas. And that can be kind of tough. So I always try to load up on inspiration at the beginning, looking at other reference material and other pieces of artwork. And that can be a great place to start. And just keeping it loose at the beginning, not putting the pressure on yourself to have an amazing idea out of the gate. You will rarely have your best idea with your first drawing. So just kind of be honest with yourself about that you'll need to kind of warm up, have maybe some failures before you start to hone in on your final design. And then this little orb here is not actually for a stat, so this is going to be just kind of a metal rivet element. So let's bring in some form to this section. So this is not a game UI. This is for the back of a card, actually a printed card. It's going to be sort of it's like a bit of a personal project. Okay, before we keep refining that stuff, let's move on to this area down here. It's one thing you gotta keep an eye on as you're working on things, is it's easy to kind of gravitate toward the stuff that's already looking cool and then keep polishing it, right? And then you have this sort of asymmetrical level of completeness to the piece that can be an issue, especially if you're facing deadlines, right? You want to have a nice even level of care on everything, so don't get caught in that trap of focusing on the things that are already materializing. Zane asks, how much math do you need to know to be able to do this? It's a funny question. It feels very geometric, right? Like there's a sense that there's a lot of sort of like precision going on, but it's all, I assure you, it's all smoke and mirrors. And in fact, I'm terrible at math, so there you go. I think the main thing is to just have a good sense of balance and rhythm, which is all stuff relating to composition and controlling visual density, you know, thinking about having areas of visual rest, concentrating the details where we want there to be focus. So the management of those aspects are really the critical thing here versus, you know, any kind of like mathematical precision. I love your guys' questions, though. It always gets me thinking about things in a interesting way, you know. I went to school at the Art Institute of California, down here in Southern California. And then I did some continuing education at the Concept Design Academy in Pasadena. But yeah, a lot of my learning too is from my coworkers over the years. Just had some amazingly talented artists that I worked with, so it was also a big help. I mean, nowadays you've just got access to so many great outlets for information. I mean, in fact, that's one of the challenges, I think, is there's so much out there. It's like, well, where do I start, and how do I kind of organize all of this information in a way that I can parse and put to use effectively, which is, I think, one of the things we try to do with the CGS programs is take all that stuff and put it into a nice sort of organized linear path for you to go through, versus trying to cobble together a bunch of information from, disparate areas of the internet. These upbeat piano jazz tunes always reminds me of Mr. Rogers growing up. Anybody old enough out there to remember Mr. Rogers? That show was interesting because it had this like weirdly relaxed vibe to it, right? It was like you were sort of in his house and you were hanging out with a member of the family, right? But then he would approach tough subjects sometimes. And that's just a weird sort of dichotomy to that show that was very unique to it. But yeah, kudos to that guy, man. Yeah, rip indeed. Rip indeed. Yeah, I think if you're, I don't know, are you, Rushback, are you in the US here? And you might be on the younger side too, where that's probably not on your radar if you're not of a particular age. It has a very kind of old school feel to it. Okay, here I am again, focusing on the stuff that's not rendered yet. Let's get into this stuff down here. I haven't been painting yet today, so this is my first stab at painting today, so I'm kind of warming up a little bit here. But after a bit, you get into kind of a groove, and your speed increases, your accuracy improves a bit. At least that's the hope anyway. Far away from the US, yeah, so that, I think, and your age too would both be a limiting factor on knowing about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It's funny that when I was younger, I'd listen to like my parents and adults talk about nostalgia and nostalgic things from their past. And you always think like, oh my God, you sound so old. It's all this stuff is just so old, right? I mean, not that I hated all of it. In fact, I love a lot of the music from decades past, and glad they shared that stuff with me. But now I'm getting older, it's like doing the same darn thing. I reminisce about all these nostalgic things because you just typically you kind of enjoy stepping back to a simpler time. You kind of start to get it. It's like, what was that Spielberg movie where it was a bunch of just known IPs, right? Just a kind of giant smattering of nostalgia. And that was the whole statement of that movie, right? The power of stuff that you know and love. That's the challenge of starting new IPs. You know, it's like, how do you get people to care about something that they've never heard of before? Takes time. Takes time and a bit of luck too, I suppose. There it is, Ready Player One. Thanks, Blasphemer. Yeah, funny enough, I actually didn't see the movie either. I just know the whole concept behind it, and I've seen plenty of clips from it. So, but I should check it out though. It sounds. I know there's a lot of good, fun moments in it, or so I've heard. And so I think this area here is the stone as well. So we can start to bring in some aspects of that stonework in here. Little divots and chips and things. So one of the things you're going to notice different between stone and metal is that stone is going to have cracks going through it. And metal can get cracked, but metal is going to more typically have things like slashes, right? So they're going to be more straight feeling bits of damage, whereas stone, you're going to have a crumbling quality. So that's one way to get a distinguishing aspect between those two materials when you're adding a bit of wear. Okay, let's keep moving on this bottom section. Trying out a new piece of software recently called Rebel 3, which is a painting software that has a kind of a simulation of traditional media. And I was looking at it because I was specifically interested in watercolor simulation, because Photoshop really doesn't do any of that stuff. It's all like a very crude approximation through some of the mixer brush aspects and clever use of textures, and just having a certain approach can give you a traditional feel, but it doesn't have anything that robust going on in terms of the canvas, right? There's no sense of like how wet the canvas is or anything like that. So, and if you're going to do watercolor, you kind of need to have a bit of that going on for it to feel convincing. And so I was looking into that program, and it's pretty cool. I'm talking with them right now, the developers, because I had some complaints, I guess you could say, suggestions. Maybe it's a lighter way to put it. Because being a sort of, I don't know, this is a weird term to use, but like power user, right? Like I'm having to generate a lot of content quickly to a high degree of quality. So, I mean, I guess that's what a power user would be. But anyway, I thought, well, I'll email them and just, talk to them about some of the things that I would like to see changed or improved or whatever. And they were responsive. They emailed me back right away, which was really cool to see that. Customer service, really rare these days. That was nice to see. And so I might be kind of entering the beta program with them. We'll see how that goes, and hopefully they'll be able to address some of my concerns. And if I do that, then I'll happily kind of show that to you guys here and demo a bit of that, because watercolor can be really fun, really cool medium, but doing it digitally is not the easiest thing. And I've got some watercolor brushes here that kind of give us a bit of that watery feeling. You can see this kind of has a watery quality. So, but it doesn't drip, it doesn't bleed, it doesn't interact with the canvas in different ways based on the wetness, right? It doesn't do any of that stuff. So that's kind of the thing I'm looking for. Let's see. Do I ever do any concepts in Illustrator? No, not so much. Illustrator is, it's more of it's a vector-based software, right? So there's really no concept of painting in Illustrator. It's very, there's a graphic design. It's weird because the program's called Illustrator, right? You'd think that it would be more oriented to like illustration work, which I guess, illustration work can be of so many different styles. So I guess that could be fine. But when I think of Illustrator, I think of graphic design, right? I think of like very kind of precise things for print, things that need to be scaled down and up without any resolution issues. So no, I don't use Illustrator, and I'm not very good at Illustrator, to be honest. I've never had to use it much, so I know enough to get myself in trouble, but I would not trust myself to do anything professionally in Illustrator. But I guess one of the things worth mentioning there is that a lot of the softwares tend to be quite similar. So once you know Photoshop, a lot of the stuff kind of translates over to Illustrator. The menus will feel very similar. I've got a bevel here that's not what I want. I'm going to smooth this out. There should be a really fine lip here, but it's not to that degree, right? And I want this to be the prominent edge. I'm not going for perfect shapes here because this is going to be kind of like a medieval fantasy looking situation, so it's okay that it looks a bit handmade and kind of crude in some areas. Not worried about that. It's not like a sci-fi design, right, where we'd have maybe potentially super crazy precise shapes and stuff, so that's helping me work a bit faster, but at the same time I need to make sure that the forms read the way I want them to. Is it possible to make this quality of painting in Substance? So I am not familiar with 2D painting in Substance, and I know it mostly as a 3D tool or a texturing tool. So I haven't explored that, but if you guys have, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts if you've had any luck with that. But Substance is an amazing series of tools, right? We have Substance Designer and Substance Painter. And then they have Alchemy, which is sort of like a preview or like a quick lighter tool. That's pretty neat as well. And those are super amazing for 3D production. That stuff quickly came into the fold as like a critical part of next-gen development, right? I mean, that's why Adobe went in and bought them. They saw them and thought, well, I guess we better hop on this. This is kind of taking over. And there were so many tools before Substance that tried to do what Substance did. And they weren't bad, right? They just were smaller endeavors, more indie developments. And some of them still went on to do cool things like the Quixel guys who had the Endo and Dido stuff. You know, they went on to do mega textures and all that, and that's all going well for them. But interesting that Substance became a kind of dominant sort of editor in the industry. Okay, let's see. Let's keep moving down on this piece here. God, you guys, the time just disappears so fast when you're rendering this stuff. It's insane. So there I'm just using the smudge tool a bit in conjunction with painting to move and push and pull the paint around. Big fan of the smudge tool. And you'll want to play around with some presets with the smudge tool as well, because you can get really different results based on those properties. I have smudge tools that are for just sort of softening forms. We can see there that I'm like really just kind of smoking it out, or ones where it sort of gives me more of a feathered look. And at some point here, we'll turn the lines off too. We can see that this is the version without any of the guidelines turned on, and you can see that our piece is looking fairly resolved in some areas without the lines present at all, which is a good sign that we're getting a nice level of fidelity in the painting. Let's see. Some people make cool paintings with Illustrator, but I have no idea how. Seems like such a chore. Yeah, I think it's you know, in something that's not familiar to you, it definitely can seem like it's a lot of steps or whatever. And then when you get further into it, you might discover that there are little tricks or efficiencies that make it a lot easier. But yeah, I think at first glance, I would agree that it seems like there's an extra level of, I guess, forethought required to map out something as an image in Illustrator versus Photoshop, where we're kind of a bit more organic. At least that's just my initial impression of it. Excuse me. Andre asks if I may ask, what is more important, or what is important more? Hold on, let me read this. If I may ask, what is important more? Make things cartoony or real looking? Depending on client or situation, perhaps. Sorry, I don't want asking elementary. No, that's okay. Open to all questions here. Right, so what's more important, making stylized stuff or realistic looking stuff? Well, if you have a job you're working on, then you have to consider the needs of the client, right? So there's going to be a consideration there that will likely drive your approach. In your own personal work, you got to do stuff that makes you happy. But I would say that stylized work on the surface may seem simple, but really good stylized work is still influenced by things that are observed in reality, right? So stylized work is an impression, and we want to be making those choices in an informed way, informed based on things we're observing in reality. So, I mean, as a really dumb example off the cuff here, you know, if someone, for example, all their characters are drawn with the hands behind their back, right? You could certainly say, well, that's the style, right? The style is just their characters always have their hands behind their back. But we suspect that it might be because they don't like drawing hands, right? And that would be not... you don't want that sort of limitation to be driving your stylistic choices. So that's a really kind of just obvious example of that. But that same thought comes into play with all kinds of more subtle ways of stylizing things too. When we simplify lighting, we still want it to be based in reality. So when we're studying and practicing and improving, I think having reference up from real life is excellent for that. And just a note, if you guys are trying to do lines that have a more kind of accurate, straight feel, zoom out to do them, because what will happen is your hand will have to make a smaller mark. You'll have to travel a less distance to express the full distance of the line, right? So you can kind of do a quick mark and get potentially just a better, cleaner result there. Also, drawing from your shoulder can help, especially with things like ellipses, right? Rather than trying to draw from your wrist, trying to draw from your shoulder, you have a better sense of that that arc there, a more stable stable situation to work from. You can see that I'm trying to figure out how these forms overlap each other and using the shadow and highlight to help us express that, right? We need to clearly see what things are on top of other things. Okay, sounds good, Zane. Have fun with that, sir. Thanks for dropping by. Hard to do that with your Intuos. I mean, you can do it with the Intuos. Can do it. I mean, it's a little bit maybe less intuitive than drawing on screen, but it is possible. Kind of get in the flow. Yeah, I hear you though. Some things on the Intuos feel maybe a little bit weird, a little less intuitive than drawing on paper. How long does it take to create a UI concept? Well, that is all over the map, really. It depends on the complexity, right? And also, a lot of times with UI, you have kind of a moving target where the requirements change as the product evolves. At least that's been my experience with it. Sure, there's cases where people are really, really organized and don't have to deal with that as much, but the thing with UI is that it is it needs to be intuitive, right? It's all about communicating information. And there's oftentimes a lot of sort of iteration required in that through the user experience, right? Like you'll do something and then people will take a look and they'll give you feedback like, well, I don't really understand this icon, or this placement of this element here doesn't emphasize that information enough. And so that iteration can extend the amount of time you have to that it takes to create a UI, finished UI design. The more information you've got to convey at the same time, the harder that can be. And then typically what you're trying to do is reduce the amount of information being conveyed simultaneously, right? That can be a big help, but sometimes you just don't have that luxury. Sometimes everything's got to be right there in your face. And so, yeah, that can be a bit tricky. For years, I worked on a digital card game called Hex, and we had a very talented UI artist on that, Jessica Schultz, and she had to take our UI for the PC, because our game was on PC first, and figure out how to translate that to console. So for like PS4 and stuff, and a huge challenge that she took on and executed very well. And of course, she had another one of our talented designers helping her. Jared Saramago had some input on the UX, and there were other people on the team, of course, too, that were providing feedback. But they were sort of taking that on, and as sort of torchbearers of that project. And when you're doing something for console and for television, you have some unique things to consider, right? You've got to think about navigation with the gamepad, the intuitive flow as you might move from one element to another, right? That's got to feel natural. You have a limited amount of buttons to work with. And then you have the aspect of the television where people are sitting further away generally. TVs might be bigger than PC screens generally, but people are also sitting further away. And TVs have a little bit more restrictive boundaries on the edges of the screen. So you have to be careful about padding around the edges there. Yeah, and so it's just a ton of unique considerations there. But I think what we achieved was really excellent. And soon here, we're going to start to push the contrast on this more. Once we have this base rendering pass in, then we can start to kind of really make the highlights pop and adjust the overall contrast a bit, which will be fun. And I think before we do that, we'll even mirror it over so we have a sense of it overall. Some random textural noise to these parts here. You can see I'm using the same brush that I've used on everything else, just kind of dancing it in there, and I can always get in with the smudge tool and push and pull it around a bit. It's likely that we're going to add some more granular texture to this towards the end, but I'm not worried about that at this stage. It's one of those lines where I really want to rotate the canvas, but I'm being lazy. Lost our center line. There we go. Excited to add the damage to this. That's going to be really fun. Crack it up and add some bigger dings and dents. It's a little unfortunate that that doesn't meet up at the perfect corner there, but doesn't bother me that much. And there's a ton of thickness to this section right here because this is where the printer cut line is going to happen, somewhere in this region. So we want there to be a nice wide area for that to get cut and not look weird. Kind of like a safe zone, really. And so you can see like the areas that are flatter, the values are subtler than the stuff that's here in the middle, right, where stuff's kind of bumping out at us. I'm trying to kind of carefully manage that value scale a bit. This is very meditative. Nice. Yeah. No, it is. I get lost in the zone very easily with this stuff. Just rendering all the forms. And we're actually going to cheat a little bit here. I'm going to take this section, I'm going to duplicate it down. Can't use the corner because we're going to have different lighting there, but we can use a bit of this information that we did on the top there, so that's great. Slice off this corner. Okay, and get rid of this unique detail here so it doesn't look too mirrored. Okay, cool. It's definitely getting there. You digging the music there, Rushback? This is I went through all the Google Music Library when I was preparing for the stream originally, and just found a bunch of stuff that I thought was really kind of relaxing and chill. Can you give me tips on how to design worlds and for horror and dark fantasy and for characters? Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a big one there. But I guess the first thing to figure out is, just what sort of vision of that universe that you enjoy, kind of looking at others' interpretations of that genre. And because, well, the term horror fantasy or dark fantasy feels quite specific, there's a lot of interpretations even within that genre, right? So we have to kind of figure out where are we going with that and identify some key sources of inspiration. Could be movies, other games, even just a body of work from an artist. That's where I would start, because we have everything from, oh gosh, I mean, you have cartoons, right? There's cartoons that are sort of in that vein, all the way to something more gritty, like a Dark Souls, right? And the level of horror too can vary quite a bit, from stuff that's so scary that most people don't want to watch it or see it or interact with it, to a light dose of horror. But it's good to, when you're starting to invent a new world or universe, it's good to have kind of a mood board put together. Just get a bunch of stuff, right? Just look at a bunch of stuff, put a bunch of stuff together, a bunch of inspirational imagery, and then compile a mood board out of all of it. And then just sort of look for the similarities amongst all of the content you've gathered, right? That similarities within the mood board you create will be the sort of key driving forces in the look and feel you're going for. Rushback, are you asking about the horror and fantasy question, or are you asking about the stuff we're looking at here, the UI stuff? Just want to be super clear about that. About UI. So there is nothing too specific to UI, but the thing is, a lot of the information conveyed is relevant to that. There's tons of overlap, right? But UX and UI there's definitely some unique considerations with that, and also some unique software that people use for UX and UI design. So it starts to get a little bit outside of like the concept art stuff tends to focus a bit more on characters and environments and object design versus things like menus, but there's a ton of overlap there. So, if you were to take the concept art courses and then decide, actually I really love UI design, you could pursue UI and take a lot of that information, and it would be super valuable to you. Like, for example, this sort of frame design we're doing here, I couldn't really do this unless I had a sense of how to paint forms and do the lighting on here and think about materials and stuff. So all of that is stuff that will be learned in our concept classes. Remember to save your work, everybody. If you're working on something right now, remember to save. You look at other people's artwork too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just so much great stuff out there, so much inspiration. And it's good to have accounts on those popular platforms out there like ArtStation, DeviantArt, and just, you know, you don't have to even post anything, right? It's cool if you do, but you can just go on there and build up a little library of favorites. I find that super helpful. Will I be selling these cards then? I totally will. Yeah, that's kind of the idea, is just to kind of do a little collectible card thing. I don't know how it's going to go, but we'll see. It'll be an experiment. I just like collectible cards. It's just it's just been some part of my world since I was very young. So I thought, well, maybe I'll make some of my own here. Not that it's for a game or anything, but it's more of kind of like an art collectible. And honestly, you can probably use it in a game if you wanted to, right? Like there's some stats on the back, right? So you could kind of come up with a game for these things, or use them in your D&D campaign or whatever. So they're kind of open-ended. It's kind of how I wanted to approach it. It's nothing too specific. You know, maybe at some point I'll think of some rules or something. Once there's enough of these cards, if I do a lot of them, that maybe I'll come up with some rules for a little simple game you can play with them or something. We'll see where it goes. But it's in kind of the experiment stage right now to see if it gets any interest level. But I think there's some cool things that I can do with the actual prints themselves. Like I might do, you can choose different card stocks, you know, and maybe do some like gilded edges, right? Some like gold edges on it. Could be fun. But the thing that's kind of nice about doing collectible cards like this is that you can ship them around the world without having big problems with shipping costs, because those are a nightmare dealing with shipping costs worldwide. But cards, you can just stick them in an envelope, and the right stamps on there, you can kind of send them wherever you want, which is, I think, really, really cool. So these will likely have free worldwide shipping, which is something that I think people really appreciate. You like dark fantasy lands filled with skulls and reapers, fire and flames, and gothic artwork. Cool. I like all that stuff too. That sounds awesome. Whoops, that's a little strong. Got carried away there. I'll keep these subtle chips in the stonework very subtle. Going in here with the textured brush now and just kind of blotting in some variation here. What's the coolest concept that I was able to create? I feel like that's impossible for me to judge, right? Like, it's not something that's easily done on your own stuff. I feel like, you know, I tend to remember more just little sort of milestones and realizations across all of my work. You know, you think about, oh, you know, in that piece I learned about color relationships, or I learned about how to render metal or leather, you know, or composition was a challenge for me on this one. So it ends up being less about like a single piece, you know, more about all kinds of little realizations along the way. And coolness is so subjective, right? All right, you guys want to see this mirrored? I kind of want to see this mirrored over just so we can get a more complete sense of things. I'm going to adjust our levels a little bit, give us... We got to be careful here. Okay, let's see, before and after. Just, I'm increasing the contrast a little bit there. Okay, whoa, oh, hold on. We have this right? We have this right? Yeah, we have this right. Okay, here we go. Mirror, why is that not grabbing the, Hold up, hold everything. Let's make sure we got everything going on here. Is this... Yeah, there we go, okay. Yeah, there we go, there we go. Now we're getting somewhere. That's satisfying, isn't it? Oh, man. So what we'll start to do is we'll start to push the contrast more now, right? We'll start to introduce a bit more gradient in the lighting. Kind of pop the center out a little bit more. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. And then we'll start bringing in some subtle colors too, right? But yeah, if we turn on our stained glass, starting to get a sense of that all coming together. Feels like the top of an ancient tome, or maybe, you know, some Gothic doorways or something, right? That's I think that all kind of comes to mind when you look at something like this. I'm going to pop over to my handy dandy glow brush here, which is basically just a brush set to color dodge mode. And tends to work pretty well when we're trying to add a bit more highlights to things. This is the glow metal brush, which also has a bit of texture to it. Just adds a bit of sassiness to our render. +3 to sass. And we're kind of thinking about the light in the center, top center, right? So things are going to get kind of brighter toward the middle there. Switch over to the regular non-textured version because it's easier to add the brightness that way. The texture kind of makes the brush a little unwieldy. Now the real artgasm starts. Yeah, I mean, when things start to get more complete looking, that's where I think the excitement starts to grow, right? Starts to become more fully realized. Let's see, do I create a new brush for every project? Not really. No, I've got brushes that I built up over time, and I kind of tend to stick to those. You know, I may encounter a need for something specific, and I'll go looking for it, but generally my core tools can get me through 99% of what I need to do. And just be careful, guys, when you do this stuff with these highlights, because it's real easy to get carried away, you know, get real excited and start blasting this stuff. Like if I went in here and I was like, all right, highlight, right? Like that's, I mean, that looks kind of cool, right? Maybe we'll get there in a bit, but I don't want to lean into that too heavy at the start, because what we're noticing is that restraint and control we had at the beginning is really paying off now. You know, we have this sort of subtlety in the forms, and there's a realism in that subtlety. So just want to be kind of conscious of that. Do you have to take the introduction to concept art course? What are the difference between the concept art and advanced concept art? That's a good question. You don't have to take the intro course. If you want to try to skip ahead in the program, then what we do is we sort of look over your body of work and just see that you have the right proficiencies demonstrated, and then you can qualify to be moved through to a further part of the course. And what's the difference between them? Well, the intro course is giving you stuff that feels more like fundamentals, which I think are incredibly important. And the advanced course gets into more specific things. I think that's the best way to describe it without having to go into detail about all the individual modules and lessons. But yeah, so it kind of starts broad and then we get more specific as we go. And there's 3 starting in November with our sort of updated program. The concept art courses at CGS are 3 courses. So we have the intro, the diploma, which you can maybe imagine as like the intermediate course, and then the final advanced course. So 3 courses. And in the advanced course, we start to introduce some light 3D. So a little bit of ZBrush Core Mini and some Blender techniques. And then there's a bit of emphasis on the portfolio too, like how to construct the portfolio and get yourself all ready to go for applying to those jobs out there. John says the light source will help balance out the asymmetry of a mirrored image. Really like your design. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. You're starting the modeling course in November? That's awesome. Yeah, I hope you enjoy that. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff to learn there. Okay, yeah, you had a lot of 3D stuff in here. Yeah, the mentors, of course, there's going to be a little bit of variation with the mentors, absolutely. It's one of the reasons why we have the Slack community, too, for the students, where you have basically a general chat that anybody can be part of, and all of the mentors are in there looking at that stuff, and you might get some other mentors' eyes on something. They might give you some ideas and thoughts. And then we have these things called open sessions, so that you can submit your work and get another mentor to give you some thoughts and ideas on it too. If you have personal stuff you're working on, that's the chance to get them to look at that stuff. So there's a lot of different outlets and resources that are provided to all the students at CGS. It's pretty cool. Oops, not the rectangular marquee, not the elliptical marquee. Give a clear sense of that kind of middle highlight there. Bring some of those highlights in over on this side, but yeah, you can see that I'm trying to introduce a bit of asymmetry now with these highlights, so that way it doesn't feel too mirrored. And we'll try to find a couple opportunities to have some larger damage in here too, that will give the impression of a non-mirrored quality. I mean, we could even go really far with it if we wanted to. We could chip away a giant piece of something over here. That could be neat. For example, it could be that there's this huge chunk taken out of this piece here. Right, just a little bit right there kind of immediately starts to break that up. So we're we're thinking about that, absolutely. You know what I want to do is let's go into the color scheme here. We have the icon glass, we have the stat glass, and I want to add a new one in here just for these panels here. Well, I don't know if I like that color there. We'll play around with the colors later. I just want to get these blocked in. It's also, the whole thing is really bright, so it may be that we kind of go for a muted feel there. And we'll have to shift those around a little bit. We can see that the positions of them are a little bit off, which is fine. That's an easy thing to tweak. And in fact, I think, let's go for an analogous scheme here. Oh, no, that's not, I wanted to adjust this one here. There we go. Ooh, neat. Okay, yeah, that's kind of cool. The highlights are, you want to draw now? Awesome, yeah. That happens to me too. I'm watching somebody do something and I'm like, ooh, now I want to draw something. You're getting a BFA in film, so when you get done with college, you're taking concept art, VFX modeling, and animation at CGS Spectrum. Awesome, that's great. I think that'll couple with the film stuff really well. And John says you found me because of Slack. You're in the Houdini VFX course. Cool. Awesome, John. That's great. Yeah, glad you were able to drop in here. What is modeling used for? What type of jobs? So yeah, modeling is for building out environments and characters for both game and film. So in film, you know, they have to build out simulations of sets all the time. Things that they feel like would be difficult to construct in real life or too expensive. They'll do CGI versions of that stuff. So that stuff has to look really super real. Or in games, there's a whole range of styles, of course. And so you'll find 3D modeling key to that as well. And then in concept art, you'll see people use 3D as well as sort of an aid to design. So they might rough out something in 3D and then do some paint over on top of that. Okay. Just want to play around a second. Is it easy for me to move this stuff so that it's more positioned correctly here? That would be nice, just so that it's my OCD is kicking in with this stuff here. And I'll turn off the snaps because that's not really helping me. Okay, stat glass. Which one's this one? There we go. That one's there. These are a little bit on the large side, aren't they? Still need to mask out this region here. And for this removal here, we're going to use a layer mask, so we can do this non-destructively. Where is the brush I'm looking for? Come on, where is it? There we go. It's hiding from me. Okay, there we go. Last one. Okay, that's corrected now, so that is no longer bothering me, so that's good. Yeah, let's fill in these two little guys. We kind of neglected those, so. Fact, should we be cheaters? Let's be cheaters. Just don't tell anybody, alright? It'll be our secret. Rushback says, what a cheater. I know. I'm sorry, guys. Just disappointing everybody. R says, looking nice. Thanks. Thanks. Appreciate that. Okay. Well, I suppose the corners want some color too. Let's just do that real quick. Okay, maybe we'll cheat with this one too. Where's these guys here? So let's grab one of these and move it down. And we'll have to adjust the gradient settings on this because unless it... Nope. Yeah, to change the size of the inner glow here. There we go. It's one thing that's kind of weird. I feel like in Photoshop there should be... I should know when you scale things to adjust the parameters of the layer style, but it's not smart enough to do that, or at least I don't know how. If you guys know, please let me know. That'd be great. But see, because of the way we treated that layer mask there, I can reposition and rescale this glass element here, and it always obeys that edge. So, see, I can move this in here, and it's always staying true to that, which is a really handy way to deal with it. Or says it's not possible as far as you know. Yeah, I don't know either. Could be some Photoshop wizard out there who could tell us the secret. Yeah, it is a neat idea. That would be cool if they could do that. And is it really cheating? It's not. I'm just being silly. Copying is actually fantastic. I mean, if you're not doing that, then you're not working efficiently, right? And in some cases, it really helps the design, right? If we're doing like a landscape, there's a lot of mirrored shape language in landscapes and other things as well, but I think landscapes, it's particularly obvious. So using the sort of copy paste workflow can be really beneficial for efficiency and also for just a consistent, believable look to the painting overall. All right, so let's collapse up these colors here. And now let's think about some subtle coloration to all of this stuff going on. And the question that I'm presenting to myself right now is, do I create a delineation between the background and this center element? And I have a suspicion that that's going to look good. So you guys may have to be tortured and watch me paint a mask for that section, but it shouldn't take too long because we're going to be able to mirror it 4 ways because that's lighting agnostic, so that's cool. But I think I want to be able to play around with these back plates differently than I do all of this central stuff here. I think that'll be worth messing around with. Even if it's a subtle change, I think it'll be cool, or I want to experiment with it. So let's do that. Or we're kind of near the end here of the stream, so maybe I'll save that for the next one. I hate starting a process and not ending it while we're on this particular segment. So let's do the dome shape of this. I think that I want it to be a dome. Maybe it's more of a placard. Let me think about that for a moment, because I'm going to put my logo on that. It's basically my signature, so which is just kind of a T shape. So just trying to think if that wants to be mapped onto more of a spherical shape. But let's play around with it and see how that feels. I don't want it to be glass like the other things. I don't want it to be colored. I want it to be more subtle. Actually, let's use my circle brush here. This will be easy. Let's just pop one of these in. For the opacity, I wanted to create a slight secondary edge there. Just add a bit more visual interest to that section. Make a longer stream. You know, it's could be possible, but you know, I want to make sure though that we have a nice variety on the channel too, right? We've got all kinds of awesome mentors on the channel, so I think it's later today. We've got I think Simon is coming in here, who's one of our other awesome mentors, so definitely want to stay tuned for some of that other stuff. And we've got some of the other concept art mentors doing stuff on the channel, like we had the super talented Bernie Kang doing stuff earlier this week. That was a cool stream. If you guys missed that, check out the YouTube on that. I think he was doing some cool like figure drawing stuff, and I think he was kind of turning into like a creature or a zombie or something, if I remember right. Simon streaming later? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, I remember that right. You missed that, Blasphemer? Again, yeah, all this stuff ends up on YouTube, guys, so it's forever imprinted in the interweb. So if I have a gaffe here, it'll be for all eternity, right? So try not to screw up too much here. I love watching those bloopers on YouTube. I mean, it must suck to be the person in the blooper, but boy, is it entertaining. So I should be careful. I'm gonna have some kind of karma introduce a blooper to my life. I was watching a YouTube where a guy was talking about figure drawing, and he was it's a demo, right? He's presenting himself as a professional and giving us tips on how to draw stuff, and he totally screwed up some anatomy in it, and realized in the moment sort of that he was completely wrong about it. And I give him credit because he left it in the video that he uploaded, because it was not a stream, right? It was like a pre-recorded, edited thing, and he's like, yeah, this is just funny, I'm gonna leave it in. So I actually appreciate that, because I was quite entertained by it. And I'm just kind of noodling a little bit, guys, because like I said, I think I'm gonna wait for the next stream to do the mask on some of the components in here. We'll start to introduce some subtle, warm, and cool variations, and then we'll draw the final icons that will go in these pieces of glass here, and it'll be basically wrapped up. So I think we'll be able to do that hopefully all in the next stream. We'll take this one more. So I appreciate you guys hanging out through this more kind of chill rendering session. That's the thing, is you can't get away from that, right? There's always going to be that kind of just getting into the lost in the weeds, getting into the render and spending the time to get all that stuff realized. But you can see that, you know, if you put the time into it, that it ends up being worth it in the end. So yeah, just kind of keep that in mind. Again, thanks for joining me for this stream, guys. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. Let's see if we got any last questions here. You can imagine the spike parts a bronze patina with the center gems. Yeah, see, that's kind of, I'm thinking like maybe some different like metal tones, some brass or bronze or something as some of these pieces, and then introducing some relative cools as well, right? So there's some parts that feel a little bit blue. It'd be kind of neat. But yeah, that's something we're going to play with next time. So I'll be back with you guys next Thursday, same time, same place, all that jazz. Let's see. You hope to have these. Oh, I appreciate that, man. That'd be cool. Look forward to that being a possibility in the future. And I do have an art station. You can look me up. It's Art of Ty, ARTOFTY, and that's basically my handle everywhere. So if you just Google that, you'll find my Instagram and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, cool. I think we'll wrap it up here. But again, thanks, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.